2,004.
He's got almost all the top recruits have been on the show, though.
Some of them, yeah. It was a good year. It was a good year. I'm really looking forward to 2025, trying to see if we can get more of the recruits on the show. We started in May, and we were able to get Julian Sayin. We were able to get Sterling Dixon. We were able to get all three linemen who are signed in the class: Casey Poe, Joseph Ionata, and the local kid William Sanders. So it was a good year. The 2024 class is most of them are already enrolled in Tuscaloosa, and really all the who's are enrolled at all their schools at Georgia, at Tennessee, really everywhere. If you're trying to be a high level recruit these days, you're going ahead and graduating, and you're getting in business. I want to welcome everybody into a special holiday edition of the Joe Gaither Show. This is the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com, and I'm having a great day. I hope you are as well. It's been a great Christmas with my family, and really I wanted to do a holiday show with one of the members of my family who has shaped really a lot of my life. And so I want to introduce my cousin, my best friend, my brother James. I know a lot of people, you hear me talk about Georgia fan friends. Well, he didn't go to Georgia. He still has affinity for Georgia, big old Georgia Southern Eagle and UTC Mock, but really I learned a lot of radio. I learned a lot of sports conversations from my friend James, and really I try to be level-headed, but James helps me with the hot takes, so I wanted to have a little fun with James on Christmas because it's Christmas, and why not? That's what you do. Hang out with your family and talk a bunch of sports, so we're going to have a lot of fun. James, man, how's your Christmas?
Man, it's been good. Been with the family several days in a row now. I feel like it's been like the 6 days of Christmas. Been with my mom, been with my dad, been with my sister, aunts, uncles, and today we had a big shindig. Had about 3 or 4 big feasts in a row, so we love that. Got to watch football last night. Got a big game tonight.
Huge.
Ravens Niners, trying to settle out the ones and the two seeds. Getting ready for the playoffs coming up. It's been great.
Absolutely.
Thanks
My
for
man
having me.
James is a teacher over at Howard High School. You guys know Howard High School because they are proud. They proudly produce Reggie White, Tennessee Volunteers fame. I know you guys probably didn't enjoy that part of his career, but a great Philadelphia Eagle and a great Green Bay Packer as well. And my man James also has one of his students with us. He's off camera, my man Ashawn. If you want to say, hey, it's fine. It's no big deal. But Ashawn is with us as well to give us our first little semblance of some kind of a live show. Let's start with Howard. Let's start with Reggie White. Basically, everybody who watches this show knows that I'm a Bears fan, a sad Bears fan. Well, I have my counterpart in James who loves the Green Bay Packers, partly because of the Reggie White connection. We'll talk some Packers and Alabama today, just a little bit of a possible intersection here in March or May of the upcoming year with the NFL draft. But let's just give the people just a little bit of background on Reggie White at Howard, what he means to the community of Chattanooga, and really what he means to you, why he really helped shape your Packers fandom. I mean, I know a lot of our time was around Madden at 10, 11, 12 years old, playing Packers Bears, but I think Reggie White was a little bit of the root of that for you.
That's right. So growing up, we were a big college football family, so kind of set on my own to pick my fandom for the pros. Wasn't indoctrinated into any one team. And I knew of Reggie White. I knew Reggie White was from Chattanooga. At that time, he had just signed with the Packers. So I'd watch the Packers. I'd watch Brett Favre. I would see Reggie White, and I'd be like, oh, he's from Chattanooga. Well, all of a sudden, I was a Packers fan. When I got into teaching, I knew Reggie White had went to Howard. When I saw that it was Reggie White Field and I saw his Hall of Fame bust and his jersey retired in the school. That really drew me to Howard because I just thought that was really cool that kind of a legend, the only player from this area in the Hall of Fame, also got his start at the Howard School. So, I came from North Georgia, so I didn't necessarily, I didn't know a lot about Howard, but I knew Reggie White went to Howard. That was my first instant draw, my first instant connection, and he recruited me there in spirit.
And you're doing great things over at Howard. You're in the middle of your second year there. Been doing a little bit of teaching, been calling football games for the Hustling Tigers. But really, James and I are here to talk college football. We're here to talk college football on BamaCentral.com. Of course, you can always follow me at Joe Gaither6 for all your social media needs. You can send me your comments, questions, queries, and complaints. The big conversation point, I know all of you guys are excited for the Rose Bowl next week, but the big conversation point nationally is still on who should be in, who should be out. We're kind of watching the Orange Bowl play out. You're seeing a lot of Florida State players hit the transfer portal, opt out, doing different things, basically punting on their season. So that game has lost a lot of its luster. I'm still interested in the Orange Bowl just because of the storylines that surround it. But really, James, you represent kind of the opposite side of the conversation. Everybody who usually watches this show, you're all on board with me. Alabama deserves to be in the college football playoff. Definitely a top 4 team. But the controversy is real. It's much more real than I think the Alabama fan base probably likes to play into. Of course, the SEC champion always going to get a little bit of favoritism, but just from someone who's not in an Alabama circle, someone who is more of an appreciator of national college football or the sport as a whole. What's been your makeup over the last 3 weeks? So, you had the decision after the SEC championship game. The 4 teams are in: Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. You see Florida State and Georgia left out, and you have sore feelings on both sides with that fan base.
Yeah, so you're right. I'm a Georgia fan at heart. Grew up diehard Georgia fan, but I went to Georgia Southern.
Go Eagles!
Go Eagles! Worked for the football team for 3 years while I was in Statesboro. So, and in Statesboro, you're kind of all into that program. So my strong emotion for Georgia, it left a little bit, but still a fan, still who I root for. In terms of how they go, it stinks. They win what 28 something, 30 in a row.
29, and wow.
Okay, yeah. So 29 in a row, and then they go play Bama. They lose that game. All of a sudden, they're out. Most years they would still be in, typically, because you could typically lose one and still at least get the 4 seed from the SEC. But just the way it worked out this year with so many good teams, that game was a playoff game. That became a playoff game. Then, so all right, Georgia, sorry you shouldn't have lost then. They eliminate themselves. Then the next question is FSU, Texas, Bama, basically. A lot of people want to say week 2, week 3, whatever. That was too long ago. That doesn't count for where they are now. But for me, that was a playoff game. That just the way it worked out. If only one of those teams were going to make it, you had to look at the head-to-head. It had to be Texas, in my opinion. So then you got to throw Texas in. Then it becomes Florida State or Bama. I understand that Bama coming from the SEC champ is always probably going to be in. But in my opinion, Florida State, they did everything you asked them to do. They can't help that Clemson was down. They can't help the SEC was down. They can't help their quarterback got hurt. And not only that, it's not like he got hurt in the championship game and we were worried that they were going to be trash after him. They continued to win, 2, 3 games after he went down. They continued to show that they could win. I'm a 3-phase football guy. Special teams is a real phase. Defense is a real phase. Offense is a real phase. For me to enjoy football, it doesn't all have to be flash and offensive firepower and tossing the rock around. I love a good defensive struggle. And Louisville was the number 15 team in the nation, and Florida State's defense humiliated them. I think that Florida State's defense could have humiliated Michigan. I think they could have humiliated Washington. They may or may not could have humiliated Alabama. If you are judging who the 4 best teams are, see, it's complicated, Joe, because if you're going to say the 4 best teams, then it's like you need to throw Georgia back in the mix. Because even though they just lost, I'm pretty sure Georgia is a top 4 team in the country. If you're going to do it based on resume, then FSU has to be in. They're undefeated from a Power 5. And then you got to look at the 1 losses. Okay, well, head-to-head tiebreaker, you would take Bama out. So what didn't make sense to me was, you say it's the best teams, and so you put UGA at 5. But then, I feel like if you're going to do it that way, FSU should have been, what are they, 5 or 6? Is
FSU ended at 5 and Georgia got slid to 6, which makes your argument even more sense.
That's my point. Yeah, I was confused there for 1 second. But if you're going to say best teams, then UGA should be 5 and put FSU at 8, 9, put them on down the line. If losing your quarterback hurts that much, then why are they even in the top 6 if you think that it destroys who they are that much? I will say there was a lot of vitriol toward FSU being left out, toward Bama. Kirk Herbstreit's been getting hammered, deservedly. I mean, we're talking about a hypocrite here. He
What a reaction in the Iron Bowl to his 4th and 31. The people, if you haven't seen it, he's calling another game. I don't know what game they were at, but he's looking at a little side screen watching the Iron Bowl. And when Jalen Milroe hits his miracle throw, and it was a miracle throw, he freaks out because Alabama's season is basically saved.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, he has said in years past, I can't remember the exact situations he was talking about, but he was saying basically like your record matters. And he was arguing for people who should be in because they were undefeated. And then he just totally disregarded his own argument right there when it was time for FSU to be out. You know, there's controversy, of course. Uh, he's plugging for Bama to get in. He works for ESPN. Does he want Alabama's fan base in it? Does he want the SEC to have a footprint in the game? You know, there's definitely these things are definitely suspicious. Like I said, if you're going to call it the best teams, that's fine with me. Leave FSU out. They lost their quarterback, but then go through with that all the way. Put UGA at 5 and move FSU on out of the picture. Go ahead and punt them on down the road. You know.
James, I think you hit on a lot of things. It is a complicated conversation, and it depends on what angle that you really want to look at. Do you want to attack the college football playoff because the structure is 4 spots for 5 Power 5 conferences? We heard Brian Kelly say we knew there was 4 spots and there was 5 Power 5 conferences. You've got a structural issue in the playoff. That's a problem. You have the Florida State issues in their own conference and kind of looking for backdoor exits in their own conference and thus not being protected by their conference or boosted up by their own conference when it came time to support a winning team or support a winning program. And so you have those aspects. You have the ESPN aspect in Kirk Herbstreit that you just hit on. And I think even as an Alabama fan, it's something someone who covers Alabama, it's something we have to acknowledge. ESPN is 6 months away, 9 months away from igniting a huge deal with the SEC. Alabama, we're going to be on ABC and ESPN the next 13 years. Of course, you want to keep your partners in the league happy. I think I think it would be silly for the Alabama perspective to ignore that was a reason. I just think that college football is broken as a whole. This argument, these 3 weeks of arguing who's in and who's out is really just a symptom of what we've dealt with over a 15-year period, and something that we've been dealing with my entire lifetime. It got implemented with name, image, and likeness, implemented with transfer portal. The whole system, the NCAA system, has been broken from forever, really, since college football became one of these, probably your 3rd most popular sport in America. NFL, and what? NBA college football, NFL college football, NBA, NFL college football, MLB, maybe.
So it's probably too.
The money is so large that it cannot be ignored. The Florida State probably isn't. Who's going to watch Florida State with a backup quarterback? And now, breaking news on Christmas Day: Tate Rodemaker, the backup quarterback for Florida State, has opted out of the Orange Bowl and is transferring out of Florida State. So, what do you want? The whole system is broken.
I will say this though, Mike Norvell, Florida State coach.
I think he's done a pretty good job.
Yeah, on the field, he's done a really good job. But what he has to understand is that job is almost the job of a politician. It's not just about. It's obviously not just about wins and losses because he won all his games, still didn't get in. But when he was asked to, when he had his chance after that game to defend himself, to defend his team, he didn't come strong. He was almost like, well, we've had this failure, but in the end of the day, we find a way to win. So if you put us in, we're going to find a way to win. He should have taken the line of, what do you mean we're out? What do you mean you're going to take us out? We're undefeated. We're from a Power 5 conference. He should have made the argument that it was so outrageous to even consider leaving them out. He should have been calling anyone. He should have been blasting people. He should have been putting them on blast about how, like, well, that's corrupt if you don't put us in. We're undefeated. Like,
you know what he should have done?
He what's that? Yeah.
He should have put. You mean you're going to leave Bobby Bowden's program out?
Right.
You're going to leave the program that Charlie Ward, that had these Heisman Trophy winners, that had these national. He should have been hammering the history.
Because that's what I said. I said that FSU was too big to punk. Like, they've punked other undefeated teams.
UCF.
They punked UCF. Whatever. Not a Power 5. I said FSU was too big. They had too strong of a fan base for that to happen. I mean, I could see ESPN headquarters being worried that if they had left Alabama out, that their headquarters would be a heap of ashes right now. You know, they would
I
come
think you
up
might be
there
right.
and they wouldn't have let it go.
No,
If you
no.
get the, don't you get the feeling that like everyone was raging and angry for like 2 weeks, but now it's kind of like we're
Yes.
moving on.
Yes, 1,000%.
It's kind of what like the four is settled. FSU, you got screwed. We feel bad for you, but whatever, that's over. We're on to the four.
I couldn't stay off Twitter that Saturday night driving back from Atlanta. It was just power point for Florida State, power point for Alabama, against Florida State, for Texas. It was like a knockdown dragout on social media, and it was like amazing to watch. But then 3 days later, it's like, well, here we are. Get ready for the Orange Bowl, Florida State. Sorry, it stinks. James, I am going to push you just a hair, though, because you've gotten on to my boy. You've gotten on to the greatest college football coach of all time in the past
Oh yeah,
because of politicking, because Coach Saban has done the, now, not often, but we've been left out in 2019 and 2022, and Coach Saban has routinely, after both those years, come out and said, we should have been in for this reason, that reason, X, Y, A, B, or C. So should Norvell should have politicked harder?
I'm with you right there. And the answer is this is how it goes. When you're out there politicking and you're being shameless, you're exposing yourself to get laughed at by people like me. But if it works, it works. And he should have done it. He should have done it.
His fan base would have loved him for it.
When Nick Saban gets on there to these bowl games and talks about his team and he's on the halftime set when he's not there, it's kind of shame. It's kind of like, man, well, you didn't make this game. You should go away. But guess what? He's recruiting. He's working hard for his team. He's representing his team. When Nick Saban gets on and talks about betting lines in Vegas, who would be favored, when we all know that Vegas is not there to set who the favorite is in terms of on the field, they're there to draw in money. They're there to manipulate bettors. It's kind of like, come on, Nick, you know this. You know what you're doing here. But Mike Norvell did none of that, and it would have served him. I remember watching the Louisville game and coming off the field. His argument was passive. His argument was, we lost our quarterback, we lost this, but we found a way to win, and we'll do that again. It's like you said, he should have invoked the dead. He should have invoked history. He should have invoked the power of the fan base, the power of the program, and what they've done. And another thing, if you notice, anybody that argued against FSU, what they did was they talked about that third string quarterback, and they're like, we're gonna have to endure that. No, that third string quarterback, for them to have beat the number 15 team in the nation with a third string quarterback, that's an argument for them to be in the playoff.
Let's make it a parallel. Alabama's third string quarterback is Tyler Buchner. He's transferring out of Alabama to play lacrosse at Notre Dame. Alabama, who's 15 in the country in that range? Missouri. If Alabama ends up playing a Missouri in a conference championship game with Tyler Buchner, remind you, how did Alabama do with Tyler Buchner and Ty Simpson against USF? I know it was pouring rain, and that USF team just won a nice little bowl game. But come on now, that's not really apples to apples comparison. So to win the conference championship against Louisville on a week's notice, because the second string, real first string, got a concussion. Now you're in, son. Go get it done.
Mike Norvell should have said, "We can beat you with a third string quarterback. Imagine what we do with our second string quarterback." We've got a veteran second string quarterback who has won games here before. Imagine what we're going to do with him when we can whoop you up and down this field with our third string. He didn't do that. He seems like a good coach. I can't hate on him because FSU was really down and he brought them to undefeated status. So I'm not going to sit here and rip him as a coach. But I feel like he did not. His argument was so weak, it gave the playoff committee an outlet to persecute FSU.
Absolutely. And the playoff committee, whether you think they got the four correct or not, the path that they took to get there was horrific. And I'm on the stake that I think they did get the four correct. But you can't have Ohio State and Michigan play, and you drop Michigan, or you drop Ohio State when they lose from 3 to 6, still in front of your Oregon, your Texas, and Alabama, only to have Texas and Alabama move up ahead of them the next week because Ohio State didn't play. The whole entire path to get to the final destination is partly, in my opinion, what has rightly drawn some of the vitriol, drawn some of the consternation, drawn some of the complaints from people, because I think they might have gotten to the right destination, but they got there in a very strange and almost corrupt manner.
it goes back to what we were talking about how if it's the five best, put Georgia at five, get FSU out. If it's resume, then you got to put FSU in. It's like you have to pick a lane and go hard toward that lane. They dabbled in both sides, and nah.
What do you think now that we're here? We got the four. Obviously, Florida State and Georgia will play in almost a meaningless Orange Bowl now that a lot of players have opted out, and Georgia's having their own transfer portal issues as well, but also winning in the transfer portal. If you haven't noticed, they got Trevor Etienne, the running back from Florida, so they're doing quite well. Georgia still going to be a beast to deal with next September in Tuscaloosa. But next year, college football is going to really be in a much different place with the 12-team playoff. These discussions that we're having, the Texas-Alabama game in week number 2, does it matter or does it not matter? This past year, obviously, it didn't matter because of the way the playoff fell out, but it should have. It should have mattered. It was a major game, and it was a lot of fun to be there. But next year, when Alabama goes to Wisconsin and brings South Florida up from Tuscaloosa to repay the home game, their stakes are not going to be near as high. I definitely felt in Tuscaloosa that week number 2 when Texas, maybe it was the pageantry, maybe it was me getting sucked into the blue blood nature of Texas, but I felt, ESPN Saturday night, this is a big game. This is a big deal. 2 huge programs. This game's going to mean something for us 8 months from now. And it will in its own sort of way, but not necessarily with the same stakes. With the 12-team playoff, James, how much does the college football season, regular season, matter?
They took it. They went too far. It should have been a 16 playoff. It should have been. I mean, in the future, there's not going to be 5 Power 5 conferences. In the future, there's not going to be 5 Power 5 conferences. So you can't say 5 Power 5 plus 1 group of 5 or plus 1 wild card. But 6 was the perfect number. 6 gets everybody that should have made it pretty much every single year. There's hardly ever 6 teams who you think legitimately could win a national championship.
You missed out on Oregon this year, but they had 2 shots at Washington.
They were the 2 losses, right? If you have 2 losses, I don't want to hear. It. Sorry, bud. But you can't. The thing about like college football that makes it so great is every Saturday matters. You lose one game, and you should feel like you no longer have a chance at that title.
Alabama knew that they were basically no shots left, no mulligans left after week 2.
Right, and they knew that they were also at the committee's mercy. Now, it went favorable for them. But in the NFL, the Packers, if they lose 1 week, as long as they don't lose 8 weeks, it's cool for the most part. You can get in as a 7th seed. So I think that it's definitely going to – think about Ohio State, Michigan. For Ohio State, Michigan, every single year it's been the winner gets it all and the loser is completely screwed. They get nothing. Well, in the future, we'll just see them both a month later. Think about it. In the regular season when Ohio State plays Michigan, are they going to play their best plays? Are they going to empty the bag of tricks in that game, or are they going to be like, we'll see them in a month?
Well, yeah, you saw right? the way the playoff field would have shaped out. I believe you would have had Georgia and Missouri playing in the first round and the winner playing Alabama. We've seen Georgia, Missouri play. We've seen Georgia and Alabama. Now, I'd like to see both those games over again. They were quality football games, but it's kind of the same path to a redundant path to the same place.
I never feel like there's 12 teams that are worthy to compete for a national championship. And if you do think that there are 12 teams worthy, then you really got to respect Louisville, who at 15 just got beat because they're only 3 slots away from getting to play for a national championship. So it's 6 for me. It might be 8 for me, but I'd rather give 1 and 2 a bye. However you want to work it out like that. I think if 6 teams were in, every team would know they have 1 mulligan, and then beyond that, then you're playing for your life every week. But I think at 12 teams, the best teams may have 2, potentially 3. There may be a year that a 3-loss team gets in. And that's not good. That's not riveting television for me. And it's September. That makes September, whatever.
How do you play in with that comment and that thought process, which I do agree with? But then I'm going to contrast it with the 2024 schedules. We've gone over Alabama's schedule before. Georgia has a very tough schedule. Bringing in Texas and Oklahoma into the conference has ramped up. Everyone's playing at least 2 or 3 of the top 5 programs in the SEC, the Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, and LSU. Everyone has at least 2 or 3 of those games on their schedule. So maybe you need an extra mulligan?
I mean, all of those teams are playing a tougher schedule, though. So let's say there's maybe there's one undefeated. You should just crown that team national champion, you know. But let's say there's one undefeated, they're definitely in. Everybody else, they've got 2 or 3 losses. If they've all got 2 or 3 losses, we're right back to where we were anyway. You know, like even if it was a 14 playoff, if they all played each other and everyone had 1 or 2 losses, then we'd all just get an extra mulligan because we played extremely tough schedules. You would still those games would still matter because you'd be wondering who the 4 were. Now you can lose and still be one of the 12 easily if you're any good. That's my point.
So what if here's an Alabama perspective that's been thrown out after the decision was made. Alabama and Texas were scheduled week number 2 several years ago. If Alabama had played its Kent State, its Ball State, its Middle Tennessee Tech University, south of the school from the blind and dumb, whoever they usually play, Cupcake University, Alabama goes all the way through their schedule at 12-0. Georgia goes through their schedule at 12-0. Texas goes through their schedule 12-0. You have the SEC championship game and flip a coin for however that would go. But then you have Alabama, Texas, Georgia, Washington, Michigan. Everybody still kind of it changed. It almost changed the course. You might have still had Georgia in the playoff if Alabama had not played Texas in that week number 2.
The thing is that argument is somewhat pathetic from Alabama, and I heard it this year, and it was laughable because most years this is what happens. Alabama plays a tough team, a team that's supposed to be tough, on a neutral field week 1 when they have the best camp. They're ready to go. The other team is figuring things out, or either way, it's in Atlanta. It's somewhere where it's 80% Bama fans. They get their win, and then the rest of the year they go Kent State. They go whatever. Bama, that the Texas game was at Alabama. It wasn't at Texas. They won the game when it was at Texas the year before, right? But my point is this is the one year that they played a team that turned out to be top 5, whatever, top 10, and they lost. And then now they're saying, well, we could just play the Kent States of the world. Well, majority of the time they do. I mean, a lot. How many? Everybody was talking about how soft Georgia's schedule was this year, and it was. They were supposed to play Oklahoma. That didn't work out with the conference thing. But let's not act like Bama sets itself up every single year to run through a gauntlet. They play one neutral site typically, tougher game. They play 3 cupcakes, and then they play their conference schedule. So
Now,
they just lost.
that was, I got to put on the Gump hat and say, that was then. This is now.
Well, that
Because
was
the next 10 years are moving into that. But the last 16, you're exactly right.
right. So I'm just saying for Alabama to take that line this time when they lost that game, think of all the teams that line up to play Bama every year, whether it's who they played non-conference. I think they played Notre Dame they've played at Florida State.
Yeah, we played Florida State one year, Michigan twice. We played Virginia Tech twice, Clemson twice. We played USC once, Southern Cal once, Wisconsin once.
Right.
Yeah, that's about right.
So those other teams, they take the loss to Bama, and for the rest of the year, they're sitting there with 1 loss. They lose 1 conference game, and they've got 2 losses. They're completely out of it. So Bama did the same thing other teams have to do when they play Alabama. This year, they just lost it, and so now they're like, well, I guess we could play Kent State. Well, the other teams have taken that loss for years. It's time to just take it. I don't buy that argument.
Do you think the college football playoff put Alabama and Texas in so that future schedules won't be look, we can't take Alabama out because we want them still playing Texas. We don't want them scrapping up all those contracts and putting Kent State back on the schedule.
It's not going to matter when it goes to 12 teams anyway. And I don't because I mean you need to play one in the old system. You usually would play one big out of conference game in the SEC. Then you play 3 cupcakes. Then you play your SEC schedule. Bama's done it. Georgia's done it. They've all done it. The difference is Bama lost this year, so they wanted to say, well, we could just play Kent State. Well, go ahead. We don't care. I mean, every team could say that every year when they lose. Just win the game. You lost the game. You saved yourself. You had redemption by winning out. You got in the playoff. You're probably going to whip little Jimmy H. Jim Harbaugh, he's going to have a tough time, I would say. And then
I haven't decided how I think that game's going to go, really, because I think Michigan's good. Actually, and like years past, I would have been in the Michigan stinks. They're no good. I've been watching them. I think, and maybe it's just because I've been watching them play Purdue
right.
and Indiana and Rutgers. I think they might be good.
They might be good, but it's hard to know how good they are because they really the only tough team they played was Ohio State. Penn State, I don't really think is that good of a team. Their non-conference schedule was a joke. I mean, they won half their schedule without their coach even on the field.
It was 47. It was 41-7 in most games. It was like one touchdown that the other team would have. And so I do think that Michigan's good, but I don't think they've been challenged, especially defensively. They haven't played a quarterback on their entire schedule.
Where's that game going to be? Where?
In Pasadena, California. So it's the Rose Bowl, which is very interesting to me because from a Michigan perspective, they were in a no-lose spot. They're the number one team. They get to choose. Do you want to play in the Rose Bowl or do you want to play in the Sugar Bowl? And they say, oh, well, we're the Big Ten champ. Of course we want to play in the Rose Bowl. That's our history, Big Ten and the Rose Bowl, great partners. And okay, great. But to draw Alabama, and this may be my gump glasses, and slam me if you want, but there are very strong Alabama ties to the Rose Bowl from the early 1920s. And really, the last two times Alabama's played in the Rose Bowl, you had 09 with Mark Ingram winning the national championship against Texas. And then they played the Cotton Bowl, Rose Bowl sort of combo with COVID in 2020. But there's historical ties. And so Alabama fans feel a little bit strangely at home in Pasadena. And so is there no win situation where you're going to pick the historical home of the Big Ten in Pasadena, or do you take Alabama's backyard in New Orleans or the Sugar Bowl? It's a very challenging spot for them.
I mean, it was obvious they should take the Rose
Bowl. Of course.
They want to come down to the South and play. But I'll say this: it is not to be rude, but it is Gump in nature to talk about 1920s. There's not
remember the Rose Bowl will win. Then hey,
there's not a single Bama player that has a connection to the 1920s.
But they all know the line. They all know the fight song. Remember the Rose Bowl will win. Then hey,
all right. See, I didn't know it, but I will say this: the Rose Bowl stands on its own. I've been to a game in the Rose Bowl. I saw Georgia Bulldogs play Oklahoma to triple overtime. Baker Mayfield was the quarterback of Oklahoma. The whole experience in January, it being sunny and 70 degrees on a historic track, a historic field, historic stadium. It's a place you're going to get up for. So Bama fans are going to make a vacation out of it. They're going to get there a few days early, have a great time in Southern California. They're going to have a great time at the game. Going, I would say, out of the Super Bowl, out of the Superdome for once, getting away from New Orleans because they've done that. We've all done that in the SEC and taken that journey to college football Mecca, to the Rose Bowl. Either team's going to be big up for that.
Absolutely.
I would probably – I like that. If I was Bama, I'd be happy to play in the Rose Bowl for a chance to then go to the national championship. How
about just the branding of this college football playoff? Just from a brand, we'll move on here in just a minute. But I'm just blown away by the branding of the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and boom, who do we have? Oh, Alabama, Texas, Michigan, and yeah, Washington, you're a cool team, but I guess your brand doesn't quite stack up. And all that to say is, circling this all the way back around, Florida State, is this why you were left out? Your brand isn't the Alabama, Texas, Michigan, and I guess we have to take Heisman Trophy contender Michael Penix undefeated.
I mean, maybe it is, but maybe my perspective of FSU is skewed, but I've been to games at Doak Campbell. I think Florida State game day experience stacks up there with any in the country. I think that if you put them in the SEC tomorrow and you showed up at an FSU game, you would not know the difference. It may even be better than some places in the SEC.
Probably would.
When they bring the horse out and slam off the horse and the place goes crazy. I went to FSU versus Georgia Tech. That was Paul Johnson days and Jimbo Fisher days. Georgia Tech won 38-35, so the FSU fans went home unhappy. But I thought they had a brand. Maybe it's just growing up within 6-7 hours of Tallahassee, but I see FSU stuff all the time. So I didn't think that they were slouch enough to be left out for that reason.
Sure.
That's my point.
Sure.
If they were, then I would say that shows. So Joe and I have mutual friends who us loving the SEC, they think that we worship the SEC. Well, we just saw a perfect example of why it matters what conference you play in. If you play in a well-respected conference and you win that conference, they're like, they won that conference. They're really good. They're in. If you play in a joke conference, you can go undefeated and still get left out because people think, weak schedule, weak conference. So we just saw that it does matter where you play. You know,
And strange, I never would have thought. The response from the college football from Bill Hancock, a so-called Power Five conference, back to Florida State. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I was born yesterday, but I always thought the ACC was a Power
who
Five.
is? Forgive my ignorance. I mean,
Bill Hancock's the director of the college football playoff. So Boo Kerrigan is basically the chair of the playoff committee, the 13. But Bill Hancock is basically the executive.
What was he before? Like, what's his background like?
His background is in college administration. He was in NCAA. He was high up in the NCAA. He spent some time on one of the playoff committees, the early playoff committees. He's an old man.
I guess my point is, I mean, that's really disrespectful.
Yes, it is.
Like, did he? I'm wondering, was he like the president of University of Miami, still ACC, but what's a rival of FSU that's in a different conference? You know, like that is a clown thing to say.
Yes.
I mean, the ACC was down this year, but the ACC's. I mean, it's always one great team, and then one team that usually lifts the conference up to relevancy, to somewhat respect. So whether it was Virginia Tech and Beamer Ball, whether it was Clemson and Dabo, or FSU for decades, and then obviously they're a great basketball conference, but the ACC has not been the clown conference. They've been a Power Five conference.
Sure, that's what I always thought.
For him to take that backhand, I don't know, man. That's why FSU got left out, because if Alabama, if this guy had taken a backhand at Alabama like that, he would need to hire full-time security.
Greg Sankey would have litigation the next day.
Right.
The SEC commissioner would have some sort of action.
This guy would need to hire security.
Yeah.
I mean, and think about it. Even now, 3 weeks later, I'm hearing FSU fans that don't want to talk about it anymore.
Right.
The anger has subsided. If you did this to Alabama, the anger would not have subsided.
It would be still level 10.
Right.
I'm sorry, it would be. People would, and that's a little.
There would be protests at that semifinal game.
Yes,
they would be blocking the entrances to the game.
Yeah, I don't think that's too much of a stretch.
The team's going to fly in on a plane, and then they're going to get on a charter bus, and they're going to go to the stadium, right?
Yeah.
When they're in there at that stadium, they would come back out, and those charter buses would be on blocks.
Flipped over.
They would be on blocks. So, that's why this happened to him, I suppose, and it starts with Mike Norvell. Even when he found out, his reaction was one of hurt, not anger.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point.
His reaction was one of hurt. I think the committee needed to fear anger. They don't fear tears, So.
Well, let's move to a different conversation. We're about over halfway through here on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral. We're having a Christmas edition of the Joe Gaither Show with my cousin James Gaither. We're having a lot of fun talking college football playoff. You can follow us at Joe Gaither6 on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all the social media accounts. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. Subscribe, rate, and review the show. James already did. You should too. He may have given me 1 star, but you can give me 2, and we're going to keep it rolling. Talk about your Packers. Look, everybody knows my disdain for the Packers is more than Auburn, more than LSU, more than Tennessee. But you got to be appropriate when you have a good guest. And I got a good guest right here who knows his stuff. The Packers have had a weird season, a little better. I mean, everybody in the NFC North outside of the Lions, congratulations. The Lions winning their first NFC North title ever. Last time they won a division, it was the NFC Central this past weekend. We're in the basement of the division a little bit. What's going on with the Packers? Jordan Love first year, but more importantly, looking forward. I've been reading lots of mock drafts. That have the Packers in between 12 and 16, 12 and 20, somewhere in that range. And I see the Packers taking an Alabama player in a lot of these drafts. And I don't need you to be a college football draft analyst expert, but just from what you've seen off Alabama this year, you see Terrion Arnold and you see Kool-Aid McKinstry being the most popular names, mid-round cornerback pick for the Packers. What do you think of those two guys? Or is there anybody else in the college football grand scheme of things that you're like, this guy could help us, 2 or 3 wins next year. This guy could boost our program. This is who the Packers need to go after in the 2024 draft.
Well, the thing about the Packers is this. They're obviously amazing in some sectors of the draft. In some sectors of the draft, they just have to throw paint on the wall, and they have to hope that it sticks. They've obviously, for 30 years, had a plan for quarterback, and it worked with Brett Favre. It worked with Aaron Rodgers, and it's going to work. It's working with Jordan Love. Jordan Love is 3 touchdowns away and 421 yards away from breaking the if he was a Bear, he would have broken the single season touchdown and yard record, and this is his first year.
I shouldn't let these slanders fly, but
So
truth is truth.
my point though is just that this department, they seem to have a plan at offensive line. Wherever they draft them, they're going to put together an average offensive line. But on the defensive side of the ball, they have gone first round after first round after first round after first round, and they're still a mid-tier defense. The defensive coordinator, he's probably about to be canned. My guess is they didn't want it, being a family franchise, they didn't want to do it on Christmas Day to the poor guy. But he's as good as gone. The GM will be there, so due to the problems with the defense coordinator, our top cornerback Jair Alexander, he seems to have he seems disgruntled right now. He seems to have real problems with the scheme. Every time he talks to the media, he's really sounding
He's spicy.
He's being very spicy. He sat out 6 games. A lot of people didn't think he was hurt for 6 games worth. So is he not playing because of that kind of thing? And then the GM traded Russell Douglas, who was a secondary member, who was a dog. He loved to hit. He loved to tackle. And so now he's gone. So you got him gone. You got Jair. We don't really know what's going on with him. So once again, we are going to have to get to your point. We're going to have to go defense again to start the draft. We got a young core on offense. We're going to continue to throw stuff at defense, and we always draft for measurables. So the RAS score, the RAS score, every single guy that we draft ends up being off the charts on that. But that tells you that they're athletic. That tells you that they're strong. It doesn't tell you their mentality. It doesn't tell you that they're mean. It doesn't tell you that they're dogs. It doesn't tell you how well they tackle. And that's what this defense needs. This defense needs people that are not finesse guys, but people that love to hit, people that love to hurt people. And that's why I say to Kool-Aid and to Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold does have some dog in him.
For our listening audience who didn't see that, what was the action for Terrion?
Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Yeah.
Not everybody's watching us.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, thumbs up for Terrion. When I see Terrion, I see him enjoying mixing it up. I see him going in and hitting somebody. I see him being able to tackle. I see him being a pretty good cover guy. I see Kool-Aid being flashier, being more finesse, more of a technician. We've got enough technicians. We need people that like to hit. Quay Walker, we got him from Georgia. He likes to hit. Problem is, I'm not real sure about his mental acumen for the game. He hits the wrong holes all the time. But he's got a little dog in him. So we need to draft the defense of guys who like contact, and I think Terrion does. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he was available if we went his direction.
Are you familiar with the term lank from Alabama football this year?
No.
All right, so Terrion Arnold basically started the phrase with Jalen Milroe, and you can adopt this if he's drafted. Lank stands for let all naysayers know. And basically, Terrion Arnold has put a big old chip on his shoulder, and he's been buddies with Jalen Milroe, so he put the own chip on Jalen Milroe as well. And that's been the Alabama theme this year. Would you like lank to be the theme of the Green Bay Packers defense? Let all naysayers know.
That's right, because they have been trying to let naysayers know, and the naysayers have been correct for several years. Even this year, the defense was supposed to be the thing that carried us as all the young players on offense kind of came along. But the offense really, I think we have one player on the whole offense over the age of 25. For how the young core that they are, they've done their job. It's when every single quarterback that plays the Packers ends up having a career day. Bryce Young, he looked like he should have been Rookie of the Year last night. Tommy DeVito looks like an MVP candidate when he plays us. Baker Mayfield looks like he's at Oklahoma playing in the Rose Bowl throwing to CeeDee Lamb. This is a problem, and maybe Terrion can help us get some of this under control.
So is Justin Fields on week number 18 going to have his best passing game ever of his career?
Justin Fields is probably going to make himself about $200 million in that day. I would say Justin Fields should go ahead and put the down payment for a new house if he's got it, and tell him he's going to pay it off in cash in just a few weeks. Because right now the Bears may or may not be sure if they're going to stick with Fields or if they're going to go Drake May, Caleb Williams.
That's
But
what's going to
after
happen the last week of the year.
there,
Bears will win that game
yep,
by a lot, and Justin will look good, and George McCaskey will say, 10-year contract, $500 million for Justin.
that man,
McCaskey's such a fan. If he beats the Packers, everybody's coming back.
that man's life is going to be changed. We're going to say, Aaron Rodgers kept a lot of bad coaches in Green Bay around for years, and a lot of players that stink. And you can tell that they stink because once they leave the Packers, they stink. They become Alan Lazard and in New York and end up becoming healthy scratches. They become MVS and drop touchdown passes just like they did it, just like he did in Green Bay. But Justin Fields is going to make a lot of money off of this too, so he should write thank you notes. Maybe he wants to buy stock at our next opportunity, and he can help fund the new jumbotron.
We'll see. That might be a big deal for Justin Fields, and I know all my Bears fans are. Our stomachs are in knots. Are we going to keep him? Are we not? I want to keep him. I want to get rid of him. I hate him. I love him. What's the world?
That's going to be a win for the Packers, though, because we're going to make him look so good. He's going to get a contract. He's going to be the quarterback of the Bears for several years. You're going to miss out on what could be a franchise quarterback, and we're going to have you guys right where you want them in the basement for the next several years.
Sounds like a great plan. Let's finish this day up with one more topic that we've gone back and forth on a bunch of times, but it's been back in the news really the last couple of weeks. The news, the rumor mill, whatever you really want to consider it. Is Nick Saban going to retire if he wins the college football playoff this year? You've seen we went back and forth on it in the summer a little bit about whether he still had his fastball, and that's not really what I want to discuss because I think it's he had a great year. Yeah. The rumor mill has swirled a lot. Nick Saban's retiring if he wins it all. He's going to walk it off. He's going to walk it off in Houston. I can see it a little, but what's the outside perspective?
I don't think he is. I definitely think honestly, Nick Saban beat the charges. He beat the allegations. I was calling him a TV man when I see him with Dion on Affleck commercials and things like that. I definitely thought the program looked a step below what Georgia is these days.
Discipline-wise, it definitely did. I don't think there's any argument.
Yeah. So, but after beating Georgia in the SEC championship game, after another college football playoff appearance, you can say that obviously he still got it. So just call it what it is. In terms of his future, though, I think the recruiting class is too good. I like if he had not made the playoff and if things were looking like he may not go back to the playoff, then I could see him taking ESPN's money, who would pay him way more than Bama will, even though Bama may pay him whatever.
Right?
But things are too good right now. You had a great recruiting class. You got transfers coming in. I know the recruits that I've talked to, they're going to Bama. Amari Jefferson. I'm friends with him, his father. They all say that Saban has sworn to them that he'll be back. These kinds of things. I think he worked a little too hard on the recruiting trail. I don't think there's any actual clues that he's going to go. So I think he's back.
We'll find out in the next couple of months. Really, anybody who tells you they know what Nick Saban is going to do is straight up lying to you. So don't believe that. I think that James is right, that we'll see another handful of years of Coach Saban. Who wouldn't want to coach Julian Saban? You just got a 5-star quarterback out of California. The last 5-star quarterback out of California turned out pretty good with a Heisman Trophy winning season, and the tide kept rolling with Bryce Young. Let's round it out here today. I'm going to give James a chance to plug Howard High School or any way that our listeners can support you or anything that you're interested in or any topic that I haven't really covered that you think, the Joe Gaither Show listeners, they need to hear this. BamaCentral, they need to hear this.
Just hope everyone has a Merry Christmas. It's been a great day. Thank you, Joe, for having me on the show. I do teach at the Howard School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. A lot of our athletic programs are on the rise. Got one guy right here, Ashawn Widener. He might be off camera, but he's about to sign a track and cross country scholarship to the school of his choice. So we're just trying to raise the youth into productive citizens, and we just hope that keeps going well into the spring semester. And other than that, let's call it a day.
Roll Tide, let's call it a day. This has been the Joe Gaither Show. You guys watched us on YouTube. You watched us on Facebook and on Twitter. You listened to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe, rate, and review the show. Send it to a friend. We've had a lot of fun on a Christmas episode. I really appreciate you guys so much. Obviously, this whole thing wouldn't be possible without Chris Walsh, but it wouldn't be possible without you guys, the listeners, the viewers, the readers on BamaCentral.com. We really want to say a thank you to you guys in this Christmas season and hope that you had a great Christmas with your family or a great holiday season with your family. This is my man James Gaither. He's not on social media because he is a much more mature man than I am. You can follow me at JoeGaither6. I'll let him know what you said about the episode. We appreciate him joining us. We appreciate you guys. We've reached out to all the 2025 commits in the football class. We'll start getting them on the program as the cycle has turned over on the recruiting train. I'm going to get some Michigan folks on in the next 6 days, and we'll find out what's going on with the Maize and Blue as the Rose Bowl is 7 days away. Oh my gosh. Make sure you follow our friends Katie Wyndham, Austin Hannon, and Blake Byler. They're getting on a plane tomorrow to get out to Pasadena. You'll be able to follow their coverage at BamaCentral.com and, of course, right there on their social media platforms. For Joe Gaither, for my family here at Christmas, for everybody at Bama Central, Merry Christmas, have a great day, and Roll Tide.